right. So this next conversation is about crypto as a grassroots movement. And the moderator will be Jerron Smith. He's a partner at Dentos Global Advisors. And Jerron will introduce all of his panelists as they begin to come up.
Okay, great. Can y'all hear me? Is the mic on? I got like a pocket mic or whatever.
We're having an audio.
Hello? All right, there we go. 2 and 3. Great. So Mark, I'm gonna call you up. Yeah. All right. Well, one, thank you. It's always great to be home. I, of course, got 2 degrees from Howard University, so God bless that. HU? All right, bet. Let's make sure that still works, you know. It has been a blessing to kind of be a part of this conversation. You know, I'm a partner at Denton's Global Advisors. I do some consulting work, but prior to doing that, you know, I worked on the Hill for 10 years on the House and the Republican side, and I served in the White House for 4 years. You know, I worked on stuff like the First Step Act, opportunity zones, historic investment in HBCUs, as well as PPP. But starting out my career, I've always cared about access to capital and growing an ecosystem of opportunity. I really love the conversation around intentionality because I think it's very powerful. You know, as a young man here at Howard, having all of the great conversations around how to help our people, you know, I set out just being very intentional about how I can play a role. And that's turned into all different types of things in my life. And the very essence of what I tried to do was get into the economic empowerment side of stuff. That's why I got a degree in finance. That's why I started working on the Hill. But it wasn't into my the last years of working in the White House, working on PPP, I got to really dig into the access to capital issue. But the blockchain piece is a way to really revolutionize on the way we think about capital access and access to money. And so when I had the opportunity to work with Sinclair, I also have a number of individuals and friends that kind of work for different parts of the blockchain industry. You know, we thought about working together to create a forum to empower people with financial education. And that starts at the grassroots. And so this panel that we're talking about, they're a grassroots organizer similar to Lamar's panel that was just up here. And so we're hoping to have a conversation on how we can mobilize education and know-how around blockchain to empower people all around the country. And so with that said, you know, I wanted to start off by calling up to the stage Olayinka Alderin, right here. So Olayinka, I know you're founder of Black Women Blockchain Council, which focuses on creating pathways for Black women to be builders within the blockchain space. Tell us a little bit about your background and what your organization is doing to build solutions for Black women and Black people all around the country.
Yeah, well, what we've been doing over the years is really promoting Black women in this space. We know that oftentimes a lot of people assume that this is a tech bro space, but however, we wanted to showcase that Black women can show up in this space as well as provide some kind of input and insight into what we're creating. We know that we're building a blockchain ecosystem. We're building a place where everyone can show up as themselves and be able to participate and reap benefit off of it. We've been providing educational pieces. One of the most important thing is being builders. And so what we're trying to provide is pathways for Black women across the diaspora to be blockchain developers. We know right now that in the sea of all these software engineers, there's only around less than 200,000 blockchain developers. And a lot of these people, they say they're blockchain developers, but they're actually people who are copy and pasting codes, right? And out of that amount, there's only there's less than 0.001% that are actually black women that are blockchain devs. And we know that money comes in when you are the builders of the technology. And so one of the things that we're doing is creating pathways to be builders of this tech. We've partnered up with Consensus last year to create a program that will allow black women to actually be Solidity smart contract builders. And that's significant because now you can take that knowledge and be able to apply it however way you want. One of the things that we realize right now is because of the copying, pasting the codes, there is a need for auditors. So imagine if black women are now showing up and being able to audit these codes and be able to identify issues with current codes. That would be significant. And at the same time, allowing people all across the diaspora to be able to tap into this tech and be able to reap the benefit and come up with solutions that I think we really need to build off of this tech.
Well, thanks for that, Olayinka, and thanks for your leadership. You know, I'm curious though, with building that infrastructure, you know, how do you think that's going to be beneficial for the black community and also the African diaspora?
Historically, you know, we've always been consumers of tech. Let's tell the truth, right? We're the one that come in and make them really popular. The most recent one being Clubhouse. I'm sure a lot of you have been on Clubhouse. And it's been really popular because the black community across the diaspora has actually seen benefit off of it. A lot of other different techs and applications and platforms that come off of tech has been really elevated because of our participation. Now imagine in the future, we're not only participating, but we're also building these platforms, and we're also encouraging each other to come up with solutions that actually matter to us and not be created by others that we're utilizing. And so I think that's the way that's going to be significant to us, and it's actually going to solve issues that matters to us.
Amen. Thanks so much again. Now I also want to welcome to the stage Marcus Allen. Marcus, you can come up here. I know you was already up here fast. So I'm very intrigued about your work, Marcus. Of course, Marcus, you're a founder of the Broccoli City Festival, and We Chip In. I, of course, have been to a number of Broccoli City festivals, and so thank you so much for creating that forum. But many people probably don't know much about the work that you're doing around tokenism, tokenized social impact. And so can you tell us more about your work and how you're using it around social impact?
Sure, yeah. So it's great to be here. Appreciate everybody. So I guess my path to technology was a little bit different. Co-founded Broccoli City, large urban music festival here and based in DC, and do a ton of work throughout the country. We're in joint venture with Live Nation. And just through our ability to mobilize people, one of the things that we saw was that the prices of festival tickets were just so expensive for our people. We had to develop ways to get festival tickets and opportunities and access to our people in different kind of ways. So back in 2018, we created a earn a ticket program where folks were able to earn a ticket by volunteering around DC. It was highly successful. We did it pretty much all Excel. It had about 1,200 people who earned a ticket. From there, that was kind of an aha moment for us to understand that there was a value proposition in connecting social impact with rewards. And obviously COVID happened, and we began to kind of dust that concept off as we were all sitting at the crib in isolation, and launched what is now We Chip In, which is a Web3 reward system where individuals are able to do offline and online actions to earn this token that can be spent on our marketplace. And we're now working with different distributors and different individuals, organizations to be able to add real value to that token. So companies like Ticketmaster, we're working with the API integration to reduce fees of tickets as well as the actual ticket price through the value of this token that can be earned by you doing things in the community.
Awesome, and I would love to hear more about how this simplified approach and education approach has allowed you to maybe educate around blockchain, and you know, what utility do you think it's given to the black community and to the black diaspora?
Well, I mean, I think what's always consistent about our culture is that we always create the cool, right? And so when you think about adding value, so many of these conversations around Web3, tokens, NFTs, I don't really see a lot of value in any of the stuff that would present itself, right? I mean, it's great to have these NFTs, and I guess it's a great art piece or something to hold on to, but what is the realistic value that's being presented. And so I think our culture, our job has always been to create what is the real value in this thing. Like what is the cultural relevance associated with these tokens and these NFTs? And that's the role I play, right? Is connecting our culture with this conversation in a real kind of way, because we know that once we create the value beside it, everybody else is gonna follow. Now they may copy, right? They may copy it and do their own thing, but we're gonna always be the root of that conversation, and it's throughout the test of time.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your leadership, Marcus. Now I want to call Cal Casa, our last member of our panel. People know we had a good conversation on the last panel about how the black community is historically underbanked. But Cal, you've been in Ethiopia for the last 8 years, area that's probably more underbanked than the black community here in America. 60 to 70% of Ethiopians, they don't even have access to phones, let alone a bank. And so you have a unique story to tell about that. Share with our audience the work that you've done in this space.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. And yes, it has been 8 years in Ethiopia. The time flies by. And it's been almost two the past two have been really difficult for many people, right? So I've been working in Bitcoin education, so very basic books, sharing them, buying them, and then sharing them, right? And sometimes I copy paste. and I think, when you do things at a very ground level, it creates so many more opportunities. So, time is such an interesting factor, and as long as you can keep your time and to some degree share your time with others, then that's the best you can hope for. And so I think Bitcoin is hope. I think Africa is hope. I think our communities have a great deal to offer. We've seen this back and forth, and so we are where we are, and I'm really excited about I feel like everything's on a cusp, right? We're almost there, and so I don't know what that almost looks like. That's why I'm always kind of asking my older uncles, right? Yeah. And Africa just has so many beautiful stories, and the African American community has beautiful stories, and of course, I look forward to sharing that.
Yep. And can you share a little bit? You've observed a lot about underserved communities in general. Can you tell us about money and how underserved communities are affected by it over there in Ethiopia, and also what you see here?
Sure. So underserved communities have to deal with a lot, and very simply speaking, when you're traveling, across borders, and sometimes you're not even sure where the border is, right? And so, is this dollar, right, to use a world favorite, right, worth its weight in salt and gold, and however you want to culturally tie that, you can make it resonate. And so my job is to try to make it resonate, right? I come here, I learn a great deal, right? And I go back and I share that message, right, of what I've learned, what I've read, and so yeah, it's going to be a thing where we have these tools, we have these builders, we have these community managers, let's say, and Satoshi's black, so or that's what I believe, right?
Amen. Well, that's great. I want to kind of open it up to the whole panel, because we've had a lot of conversation about blockchain and crypto. But what is it about it that facilitates the creation of highly engaged communities? Why are so many of us so engaged into the crypto space? And so I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I think it represents freedom. Freedom in so many different ways, the way that we show up, the way that we participate, there's no barriers, right? I've always been under the belief that we as people have always been interested in finances, always been interested in building our wealth, right? But we know that historically there's been barriers in place that kept us from obtaining that goal. And so being in a decentralized space where there isn't any of that middleman allows us to really show up the way that we've historically wanted to show up. And I think it's that freedom.
Sure, Marcus.
Yeah, I was gonna say the middleman thing, right? I think the key to this whole thing is about eliminating barriers, right? And that middleman and the misinformation and the farces and the sleight of hands, like you can eliminate that with Bitcoin, right? And the blockchain. And I think being able to write that story as it is and not like slightly altered, I think is a huge opportunity for sure.
Awesome. Cal, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, there are very simple things that we can do. I was in a conversation earlier, and I realized that what I have is so impactful, right? And what I have, not my Bitcoin, right? Not my X, Y, and Z, not my you can go through the list, right, of asset choices and possibilities of how wealth is retained, and all of these things. I'm a big believer in art. I love art. Sometimes it's a little expensive. So you have to find ways of not necessarily bartering, but being able to go to someone and say, all right, what are we exactly, what do we need? And when you ask those very simple questions, what do we need? You'll find that you don't need much, right? Like it's literally so every time I go back to Ethiopia, I bring back, 1 or 2 phones, right? I use them, and then, those phones are very, they're updated, right? They have the highest, and what that does is it kind of creates a community of, okay, wow, look at that latest, greatest, right? And so when you do that with even very simple things, but time is the essence, and this watch, keeps time. This watch was given to me by, someone I very much respect, right? And so this watch is probably the most valuable thing that I own, right? And I say this with a very, interesting understanding as to, why we hold certain assets, right? And the moment we're able to unlock what money can be and what is money and all of these cultural and lingual, distinctions, but the moment we're able to do that, you'll find that, the energy gets distributed well.
One of the interesting conversations I had with Lamar, because Lamar was thinking about having him on this panel, and he went straight to the point. It's about money, and so it being about money, and after we had the murder of George Floyd, all these different partners now wanted to kind of work with our community to kind of make up for the deficits that are throughout the community. So tell me a little bit more about wealth creation and how that kind of coexists with education and financial literacy. I always argue that you can be financially literate but still have bad habits on spending. That even if you have all the tools. I mean, I'm a financial advisor, used to work at Merrill Lynch, and some of the brokers were the most educated but the brokest people because they wanted to buy yachts, cars, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously there's a lot of people, entertainment industry, that's had wealth and lost it. So share with me, you all 3 of your perspectives on that paradigm around financial education and literacy as it relates to wealth creation.
As it relates to wealth creation, I mean, what can we do? There's so many things we can do. I mean, one, there's the technology piece, right? Which I think, there are some people that are very well versed in exactly how crypto, blockchain, go down the list, right? Can support fintech, right? And can support, our kind of financial services. And then you go into education, and then you go into community building, and all of these things, which are very important. it creates a more equal world. You know, I believe that, right? So as long as I believe that, as long as I can work towards that, hey, you do it.
Amen. Marcus.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still kind of goes back to being able to get the story at the beginning, right? And I think being able to learn about blockchain and Bitcoin at this level is a different value than learning about finances 100 years later, right? Because a thing about finance is still a bit opinion based, and it's also a little bit about how your past is, right? So like the individuals that work with you, they may have been able to roll those dices on those yachts because maybe their family is caked up, and right, they can take those kind of risks, right? And so I think there's levels in which finance, the story is told that may not be apples to apples, right? And so I think the thing about the conversation around Bitcoin, blockchain, and the whole nine is that the story is so early in its start that we can actually tell the story and how we're creating financial literacy and financial wealth in the beginning, right? Which is, I think, is a very different perspective than honestly we've ever had, because when it was the beginning, we had no opportunity for wealth, right? So now it's like there's the opportunity for wealth. We got some cash, we got some momentum, and now we can actually be first generational in that conversation.
Awesome.
Yeah, just to piggyback on Cal and Marcus, you know, it all comes down to knowledge. Knowledge is very important when it comes to finance and being able to know where to put your investments and what to do with it and the tax components of it and all that good stuff. CJ, I see you. But, you know, that's very important when we're talking about our mindset. That there's a need for the shift in mindset and letting our people know that financial wealth can also be obtainable in our community. I know historically, you know, we've gone through the process of looking at others as being the individuals who are capable of reaching that financial freedom, right? But now we're seeing that there's many individuals all across the diaspora that can actually obtain that financial freedom. And all they have to do is be knowledgeable about different aspects of this blockchain ecosystem. You can show up in crypto, right? You can show up in DAOs and DeFi and decentralized finance and decentralized autonomous organizations. And you could show up in NFTs. I mean, we've seen a significant amount of our people show up in NFTs, be able to take their creation and be able to build on it and be able to reap the benefit of it. That's significant. I mean, like, this technology is showing us that there's no limit to the possibilities of what could be built on it and our goals of how we can show up and obtain the opportunities that are here.
Thanks. Well, let's dig into that a little bit. I'm going to make a statement, and I would love to get your thoughts on it. The nature of the digital asset community is about building an economy that relies less upon centralized intermediaries. As you peel away intermediaries, invariably the necessity for trust between counterparts becomes even higher. Love to know what your thoughts is collectively about that statement, and what you think has been a part of the community / grassroots building in that space.
I think representation, you know, is significant. If this was something that was just left to tech bros, and you know, the dynamics of that, Silicon Valley, the makeup of that, I don't think a lot of us would have shown up the way that we're showing up now, right? We may some sprinkled, you know, inside of that ecosystem, but however, being able to see representation. I mean, we're having the Black Blockchain Summit, right? Yep. Because we had early adapters within our community who were able to spread that information. That's significant. Like, the way that I was introduced into this was through a guy named Samson Williams. I went to him to actually talk about startups that I wanted to create. I'm still holding it in my back pocket. But, you know, he was like, you should go into Bitcoin. You should look into Bitcoin. He kept being persistent. I was like, no. I'm in finance, right? I'm a chief compliance officer. What do I look like dealing with digital currency? But however, because he was persistent, it made me research, you know, and this is a Black guy telling me about this. I got to pay attention, right? And then when I got into it, I was like, oh, I love this technology. This technology is really for us. You know, around 2015, we were going through all kinds of stuff. Election cycle was about to happen. In Great Britain, Brexit, right? And I'm Nigerian, so in Africa, we had all kinds of stuff, and we also were going, Nigeria was going through our own election. And that trust, using the technology to build on that trust, the transparency that was created, is created with this technology. That's significant. We need that. We need that in the US, we need that all across the diaspora, because when people say they're gonna do something, we want them to do what they say that they're going to do, but oftentimes they don't.
Right.
So it was really about that.
Okay. Cal, Marcus, did you have anything to add to that? Well, I'll build on that a little bit, and I think she spoke to it a little bit. You know, what is the thing that you think differentiates digital asset economy from traditional finance economy in terms of community building?
I think substantially. I think the opportunity to create community is the key to everything that we're talking about, right? I think going back to our culture and how our culture has driven, other cultures and had so much influence. I mean, just by nature, we're gonna create bigger communities because our culture leads the conversation, right? So I think just by nature of that, I think the importance of being able to just do what we do as a community, as a culture, will naturally prevent, I guess, the tech bros from being but so far ahead, because they can't create the membership value associated with having this digital asset. Like, that's only one part of the story, right? It's like, okay, cool, you got this incredible NFT that's got this value. I own it. Well, now what? Is somebody gonna create the cultural relevance to what this thing is? And I think we lead that. Like, there's nobody else on the planet Earth who can better navigate and mobilize communities of all types. So to me, that's what the thought is.
Anything to add, Cal?
Yeah, so I don't understand how, technologically we get this done, right? Because that entails a whole series of tools and X, Y, and Z. But within our communities, right, building trust is not an easy thing to do, but it requires, looking people in the eyes, right? It requires showing up. It requires time, dedicating your time, dedicating your money, your energy, your love. I mean, when I prepare for engagements like this, there's plenty of things I can read, right? What I instead do is I try to, listen to the ground, right? I try to, I'm in DC, I'm gonna listen to, some Jay-Z, I'm gonna put on my old records, I'm gonna get into my 20s, right? I secretly feel like I should have gone to Howard, so I ended up in another part of the world, but this is where it's at, right? And so no fear, right? And you can really get anything done.
You have a question back here in the back.
Hi, I'm Crypto Bay J, and I have a question for Marcus. So you were saying that basically we bring the culture to everything. I wanted to give you an example of, like, okay, so Jay-Z and Eminem, Snoop and Eminem, right? They just did a Basie commercial. Basie, there's a documentary about how all the racist tropes that are behind what that collection is. But we have our leaders in our community that have no idea how some of the Basie characters have Nazi hats and all of the racial slurs that the developers that are on 4chan, what they did to before they even, whatever. They have like a sick joke it was what Basie is based on, right?
Yeah, I mean, okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask the question. But the question is, well, the statement is, yes, we are purveyors of culture, but we don't do our research, right? So now you have people coming out with a music video that's really just amplifying this racial joke. They have no clue. So how can we, since you work in the entertainment industry, talk to our leaders in that space and educate them so that we're not a laughing stock in this space?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I would look at that as, that's like to me, it's just that's completely it's just cap, right? Like that's not real, right? Like what that is like that's like allowing. Let me say this the right way in a control setting. This is to me, I feel like that's like someone, like a friend of a friend, told them about this. Hey, this is what's hot. They didn't spend no real time, right? Like I wouldn't take that as where the future is going in that conversation, right? I think what needs to happen, like Snoop is a player inside the NFT space, right? So if I had to guess, you know, is Snoop managing all of his assets from that perspective? If I would bet my money, he's probably not, right? But I do understand that Snoop has a great team around him who's managing how he's moving, and he's putting his things in certain areas. But I don't think that that's going to be the long-term play in that. I think that that's like I think that's just a money pit. I mean, it's a money play. Let's just call it what it is.
They're the ones that's educating our community that's the reason why our community knows about NFTs. You know what I'm saying? And I know Corday, his son, is a part of the team, but like, I don't know what, Corday couldn't have known, you know, what was going on as far as behind AC if he would have stamped him to buy it, but I know everyone's buying it, or, you know, all of that stuff.
I mean, I would say in our culture, Snoop is an OG, Eminem is an OG, but if you're a Howard student, they're not thinking about Snoop and Eminem. You know what I mean? Trust me on that. They're not moving based upon what Snoop and Eminem is doing. So as much as it's in the forefront and there's major marketing dollars behind what they're doing, that's influencing the folks in this room more than it's influenced the next generation of developers and blockchain leaders across our space. I wouldn't even trip on that. I wouldn't even worry about that. I don't even think that's a thing in a few years. But that's a great question, though. You know what I mean? And I definitely agree with your concern about what that whole movement is about. And I don't really appreciate anything about how that culture was even created and how our leaders in rap and hip hop began to kind of go after that conversation.
My brother right here.
Hey everyone. Thank you, the panelists, for having like a general conversation on this topic. My name is Cal, aka Mr. LIB. And my question to you guys is, can you guys pretty much provide, let's say, example of a creative way that our diaspora community pretty much incorporate blockchain technology, whether in Ethiopia, whether here in the United States, or even Asia. I'm not sure you want me to repeat that question, but just in case. Okay,
I heard you. Yeah. Look, there are many ways, right? Like I was just having a conversation, and you know, if you know what your ask is and you know what your give is, then the market signals information, price, right? So as long as you know what the price of something is, you can, you know, you're able to, you know, share that with the world, right? Share that gift with the world, share that item, whatever, you know, piece of artistry, piece of cultural music, right? I mean, there are so many things that we can capture in the kind of digital age. And so everything gets captured, right? I'm sure there's like 3 cameras on me right now, right? And so what happens is things naturally, right? I mean, we don't know who Satoshi is, right? So or maybe we do. Yeah. But you know, the idea is I don't, right? And I know a lot of the new people that are being onboarded don't. So how do you share your gifts with the world? That's a very, very good question. And I promise you, the moment you ask, you will receive. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I would say blockchain can be incorporated in so many different ways. We already know that all kinds of industries are going to be affected by blockchain. The way that the African diaspora can really tap into it is use it as a way for social good. Use it as a way for solution-based, for issues that we've always encountered. Healthcare, right? We know that when it comes to our health, that is not the best, right? But we can use blockchain to help us track that whole process, right? We could also use blockchain to help us retain our medical records so that we can be able to travel anywhere we want. Within the diaspora alone, there's so many different structures and constraints that's been created. One country cannot communicate or use transport between each other because of the regulations, right? We can use blockchain and IoT to be able to track supply chain, right? One of the things that I've always asked the women that are part of BWBC is, what is a solution, a pain point that we as a diaspora can fix? Remittance always comes up. Remittance. You know, Western Union got that on lock, okay? And they charge a lot in fees. Imagine if being able to create something that now the entire diaspora is using, because y'all know we do transfer a lot of money back and forth, right? Yeah. I mean, but now it's retained within the community. Does not mean that others can't use it as well, but we're using it to build up the community. So there's so many different ways, whether it's finance, whether it's healthcare, whether it's, you know, cybersecurity. Jasmine, where are you? There she is. Yeah. You know, she's doing her thing, right? There's so many things that we can create as people with this technology. And all I ask of you guys is just to start looking and thinking. Because there's money. Trek, yeah. He was just in, Lisbon in Portugal. He was talking to me earlier about the amount of money that goes back and forth from projects to projects. There's money to be made just by having an idea. And we have so many problems that need to be solved. Now, I'm not sitting here and saying everything can be solved by blockchain, but there's a lot of stuff that can be created.
Well, on that note, I know it's a lot of dialogue we can have on this issue, but we want to roll into our next panel. And so if you have additional questions, please catch our panelists maybe outside or in the coffee room. But thank you all, and we look forward to following up.
Thank you so much, Duran.